Hello, and welcome back. Shall we begin? In the beginning, there was innocence. Children were born into a near perfect system, raised by a community, and in an environment where life was reflected to developing children who understood they are connected to the world around them. Children of the earth were loved, cherished, cared for by a community consisting of siblings, cousins, all adults, extended family, including harmonious relations with the four-legged, those that fly, those that swim, those that crawl, the tree nations, the rock nations, and the star nations. Perhaps you may be wondering how one lives in harmony with the four-legged. It is well accepted by scientists that study animal behavior, such as a wolf pack or any other animal, that wolves communicate to each other through body language. They don't just bark and howl. These languages were at one time well known among wolf clans who held all the wolf teachings. Bird watchers know and understand the language and culture of the birds they are watching. They write books about their observations. Those that fly, those that crawl, and all our relations are not inanimate objects without souls. Anyone who is in the know understands our relations do not end with the nuclear family. We are all connected. In the beginning there was innocence, and the children of the earth thrived in a world enriched by all relations of living things, reflecting back to them the sacredness of life, that which gave them their dignity, worth, knowledge, and understanding. Today we are born into sin, and we have fallen short of the glory of God, and there is nothing we can do to make up for that loss. We no longer live in harmony with Mother Earth, and we have lost our ability to speak all our relations, and that which is reflected back to us is intolerance, disapproval, hatred, and we have become sickened by our reflections. Western civilization is a history of slavery and alienation. From civilization's earliest origins, archaeological discoveries, ancient texts, and holy books, slavery was always present in every society or empire that ever existed for over 10,000 years. Inequality and patriarchy are real issues, to be sure, though some remain in denial, and one wonders, how does one break through the rage that is invoked when confronted by the truth? It is well known by scientists and experts around the world that when someone experiences stress, ongoing, unrelenting, ceaseless, never-ending stress, or a traumatic event, or major traumatic event, people are not unaffected. Near-death experiences including bombs exploding, gunfire, near drowning, but such drastic experiences are not necessary to produce disorder in your life. All it takes is disapproval, a single challenge. According to some feminists, patriarchy developed when men abused women, women abused their sons, and their sons, who then develop under threat by their mother, reciprocate hatred. Misogyny means the hatred of women. Men in Western cultures have always practiced misogyny and patriarchy. It is undeniable. Why? For what purpose? Feminist scholars point to control, enslavement, hatred of women, and other seriously unhealthy factors and dynamics, and anyone who witnesses or survives such hatred is not unaffected. The introduction of the nuclear family and monogamy by patriarchs and social engineers is an unnatural imposition of institution legalized in nearly all Western cultures. We now believe and accept it as normal. Legalizing this institution is systemic inequity, paternalistic tutelage, a cultural imposition, and a religious one. Women are not the only ones who suffer this gross indignity. The children do too. Sam Vaknin describes the development of the narcissistic personality and the disorder end of narcissism. Sam Vaknin says narcissism begins with abuse. The soul of the child is murdered when a child is forced to abandon their childhood and raise, nurture, and care for themselves. With profound insight, Vaktin describes narcissism productions throughout all our known world today. We are all narcissists, he says, some worse than others. Oppression, poverty, poor diet, sleep deprivation, unhealthy cycles, poor judgment, insecurity, low self-worth. The evidence is all around us. It's not pretty to look at. It is a bit unsettling. You have two options. Take a good look around you and ask yourself if you're satisfied or don't. And be satisfied with all the world has to offer. Why, oh why, didn't I take the blue pill? Do you really have the luxury to be so satisfied? The system works the way it was designed. Those were the words of a white male cop after the police watchdog cleared him of any wrongdoing since chances of conviction was not likely. It wasn't the first time we heard those words from cops being cleared of wrongdoing, and it's not something only a cop would say. But anyone in higher classes and positions of power said those words in similar situations, including women. Is it because prosecutors know chances of conviction isn't likely because they know the system was designed to favor white people and people of power? If you're white, the system works the way it was designed. If you're not white, the system is corrupted, according to the Black Lives That Matter. The history of empire is not my personal history. I did not write it. It comes from historians, scientists, unrelenting search about humanity's past. Niall Ferguson writes in his book, Empire, The Rise and Demise of the British World Order and the Lessons for Global Power, says that American empire developed from the British Empire. Also that both empires have a legacy of slavery. Americans learned about slavery from the British Empire. Where would the British Empire have learned the institution and culture of slavery? The Roman Empire invaded an archipelago of rainy islands off the northwest coast of Europe, repeatedly taking slaves from this land base for a millennium and a half, ruling over it. The colonizers who came to North and South America after 1492 had been under slave society rule by the Roman Empire up to 1453. But slave society had been part of the West's history for thousands of years earlier. Generation upon generation of Europeans would never know freedom if children were being born into a patriarchal, authoritarian slave society, a caste system, a hierarchical, monarchical class system. All children would ever know is alienation, the separation of self, loss of self-worth, humiliation, torment, and degradation. Such a system of development over thousands of years probably alters the human genome most miserably. Historians have reproduced for us, using their brilliant scientific approaches, what life was like under Roman rule. The fall of the Roman Empire, the industrial era, and later the modern era. Life was miserable to say the least. But the truth is that it was worse than you can imagine. In fact, your ego won't let you imagine it. It is blocked from memory by an artificial intelligence of your own making. Life changed dramatically after 1492, but it wasn't because of what you might think. It wasn't civilization, progress, manifest destiny, or God's will. Dignity, human and equality rights, women's liberation and suffragette would never have occurred were it not for the single most important and greatest discovery since the dawn of civilization. Life for humanity would dramatically change direction for both good and evil, but mostly evil.